We're here with Broadcast Beat Magazine, and we have a very special guest tonight, Allan Ignatin. How are you, Allan?
I'm fine. Thank you, Ryan. Nice to speak with you.
You too, sir. Would you mind telling us about TransferSoft and what you guys do?
I'd be happy to. I'm not sure I can summarize it in a couple of sentences, but I'll try. TransferSoft was formed as a company about 2.5 years ago to develop a reimagined method of moving data from one place to another, whether that's across a room, across a campus, or across continents. There are lots of other products that do this, but we wanted to do it in a way that was, one, more efficient. When I mean more efficient, I mean not only more efficient in the use of the bandwidth, but more efficient in the use of the computers and storage that we're running on, that enabled us to encrypt the data, reduce the data in a number of different ways, and ensure that the data that was sent is the data that's received, and do all of that at line speed, independent of latency. Now, there are other products that can move data independent of latency, but if you try to compress the data or if you try to encrypt the data, they fall over. As far as reducing the data, most of the companies that are operating, for example, in media and entertainment, find it impossible to reduce the data because the basic nature of the way film is moved to digital format makes the data already compressed. But we have discovered ways using some algorithms which are now patent pending. And by the way, the company has 6 patents pending that encompass about 75 unique claims. We found a way to actually reduce the data even in the media and entertainment space. But again, media and entertainment was never our real focus. We always thought that the payment card industry, that genomics, that oil and gas exploration, the financial markets, and frankly, large companies with huge file systems of tens of millions of files, right, that needed to be replicated, deduplicated in real time and at line speed. And that's what we set out to build. And I'm proud to say that that's what we've actually developed and are delivering. We can run it a gigabyte per second. Actually, we can run it 40 gigabytes per second. We've got one of our OEMs that is actually running at 100 gigabytes per second. The important part is that we see no ceiling. We have tested our product internally at 16.5 gigabytes per second. But speed alone is not the only factor. Delivering the speed along with all the other factors overlaid, that is the encryption, the data reduction, and the assurance of delivery, and the sequence of delivery, that is specific, the sequence of blocks. We deliver data in exactly the same sequence and deposit it at the destination in exactly that same sequence, as opposed to every other product on the market.
So are you providing, is it a piece of hardware or is it software? Because it sounds like basically, if you're able to do this while a database is literally in movement, it's changing, and then you're sending it at the same time to the other location, that's copying the file, or is that it's live while it's being utilized?
Yes, and we can do that with block data as well as what we call unstructured data or file data. For example, and I'll use media and entertainment as an example, if a studio was doing a rendering of, let's say, a 4K Ultra HD 3D movie, which would be about 1 terabyte in size, it would take them probably 40 hours to render that, depending upon how many processors they put into the mix. And then they'd be faced with sending approximately 1 terabyte of file of 1 terabyte of size all over the country or all over the world. And they'd have to do that incrementally. And what we can do, which is quite unique, another patent pending, is transfer that file as it's being originally created, such that when it's finished in, for example, Los Angeles, it already exists, already is sitting in London or New York or Paris or Fort Lauderdale at the same time.
So is this hardware or is this software? It's kind of a combination of both. And what kind of data lines is it on?
It's a software only product, and it runs on pretty much anybody's hardware. It is, by the way, our approach to market is OEM only. We don't sell to end users. Our product you'll find embedded in storage subsystems that are sold to media and entertainment companies, among others, right? But also into financial markets and genomics markets and the like. It's embedded in software products that are sold for data recovery, replication, backup and restore, but by very large companies. You won't find our name anywhere. We are under the covers. We're inside the product. We become part of their product. Now, we don't have any restrictions on their saying we use TransferSoft, but we also do not, plaster the fact that somebody is using TransferSoft, right, across our website. That's not our goal. As an OEM supplier, most of our customers think of our product as part of their trade secrets, right? The integration of our product is done through. It's probably much too technical for this kind of a conversation, but through an application programming interface that is very well known, uses RESTful calls. It's able to go to the cloud, or it's able to go to local storage or remote storage. I mean, it's an extraordinarily comprehensive suite of software that is very tightly coded, tiny in footprint, extraordinarily efficient in CPU utilization, or the lack thereof. That is, it uses very little CPU, and able to saturate multiple simultaneous lines, transfer lines, from 1 gig all the way up to, fastest that's available right at the moment is 56 gigabit InfiniBand lines. We saturate those. We can run multiple simultaneous transfers, doing all of the things that I spoke about, and it all just works, right? So, we've got something really, really unique. When we had our first working prototype of the product, we went out and decided to seek investment, and we were able to. We closed our investment in 3 months. It was very, very quick. In our Series A funding. Since then, we've expanded out. We're hiring right now. We just hired 2 new engineers in the last 2 weeks, and because our customer base is growing and they need 24/7 by forever support. That's the very nature of doing OEM business. You're worldwide, so you have to follow the sun with support. And we are positioning ourselves to do just that.
A lot of the guys in the financial markets, they'll stick servers right next to the stock exchange because they want it to transfer fast, as fast as possible. And I'm sure products like this come into play for something like that because you're essentially trading faster as well on the markets.
That's right. We're dealing in nanoseconds here, and nanoseconds mean big dollars, right? In the stock market. So we do expect to find very significant utilization of our software in that environment. One of the things that I probably didn't come across because I didn't explain it well was when I talked about transferring the data while it's still being created. All right, on the surface it sounds pretty neat, right? It's just wow, okay, geez, I can have it in London at the same time it's finished in LA. Wow, that's great. But there's another factor to it, more than just the fact that you don't have to spend another 2 hours or 3 hours transferring the data from, using some other product from LA to London. More than that, because the data is generated at a rate that is lower than the bandwidth speed that exists, because right now they have to transfer it in bulk, right? We can actually use a fraction of the bandwidth that they're currently using in order to do that. So perhaps as low as 20 to 25% of the bandwidth. Now that may sound as if, well, that's nice, but what's the application? Well, the application is that you can use that same bandwidth for other things without impacting the performance of moving that movie from one place to another.
The first thing that comes to my head when I think of, obviously you're doing some sort of a compression, right?
Well, compression Well, compression is additive to our process. In other words, it's multiplicative. If we can compress the data at 2 to 1, then we'll move data at 2 gigabytes per second on a 10 gigabit line, as opposed to 1 gigabyte per second. So we don't depend on compression in order to reach our performance goals. Compression is a multiplier of our performance. I know that's not very obvious and it's not spoken about very much in media and entertainment because the data is mostly compressed already. But let me give you an example of an application in media and entertainment that's never been done before, which we're about ready to offer out to 1 or 2 OEMs for implementation. We've discovered, quite by surprise, at least it was a surprise to me. I'm a neophyte in media in M&E. I was quite surprised to learn that studios often have 25 or 30 different versions of each of their movies. And each of those versions are, roughly the same size. They may cut a scene for one, country or rearrange scenes for another country. It's basically the same movie, but 30 or 40 different cuts of that same movie. Our technology allows them to transfer the master of that movie once and then store only the differences between the different variances of those movies. And so instead of sending 35, 750 gigabyte files across the ocean, you can send one file across the ocean and then another 25 files of perhaps 10 or 15 gigabytes, a fraction of the size, and have all that you need to reproduce those 35 different versions without having to have transferred all 35 full-length movies.
So that's where I get excited, because then that essentially means, my gosh, so you're comparing data, I would think,
yes.
Right?
Oh yes, but it's done in a statistical manner, not in this typical string comparison mode, not in the methods that are typically done with deduplication. I might put in a plug here, or just reference my co-founder Mark Ziliagi, who was our chief science officer at our company, and he is a brilliant physicist and an incredible mathematician. And it is his algorithms upon which much of this technology is built. So a tip of the hat to Mark, because he's just absolutely insanely bright.
You've got a software product, so I assume it runs on a server. So then in, let's say, Broadcast Beat Studios, for example, we have a user that's a video editor at the other side of the facility, and they want to transfer, 500 gigs from here to New York City to another facility. Does that mean that computer is sort of, in a way, like all the data goes in between? Is it like a VPN connection type thing, or is it almost like it's a router that also does special functions of obviously some compression and then whatever your other algorithms are in addition to that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, and let me explain. So in the environment that you just outlined, there'd be 2 instances of our HyperTransfer service, which is what our product is, right? You'd install it at both ends, right? They would talk to one another. They'd be sitting on the servers themselves, whichever servers that you wanted them to sit on. They can run on Linux and Unix and AIX and FreeBSD and pretty much anything, right? So those systems have access to your data, which is either sitting on a NAS or a SAN, right? And your editors will be editing the data, and then they'll want to move it to another location, wherever your second location is. And the 2 services would talk to one another, and they'd establish links. They'd define that link to say, I want to compress it, I want to encrypt it, I want to dedupe it, I want to do whatever it is I want to do with it, right? And once they've defined that, all they have to do is send us a specification that says this is the data I want to send, but they can use our GUI, they can use our command line interface, you can embed it within somebody else's product and send. We don't sell to users. So this isn't something an end user would be doing by themselves. They'd be, they'd acquire our product from one of our OEMs, and our OEMs would help them install, configure, and learn how to use it. But all of those features, that is a command line feature, a graphical user interface, a RESTful interface, are all available, all delivered to our OEMs for customization, with their own artwork and ID, and they would then install it and show, how to use it. And once it's installed and running, there's very little tuning. Our product is mostly self-tuning. There are, lots of software knobs and switches and bells and whistles that can be implemented, but for the most part, the software is very, very intelligent. We identify what the bandwidth is. We identify what the latency is. We understand how much memory is available. We allocate buffers automatically. All of that stuff is done internally by the software itself, so the users don't have to worry about it. And typically, users aren't really that familiar with those things. So trying to put the intelligence where it counts, that is, where the users would run into difficulties in understanding, taking that out of their hands, right? Even taking it out of the hands of the IT guys, not having to worry about it, right? The software does it all by itself. And the rest of it just flows.
As time goes by, we're transferring larger files from facility to facility, and especially in motion pictures. But thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Ryan. And I'd be happy to chat with you whenever you like. I know your audience is focused on media and entertainment, and despite the fact that we had not entertained media and entertainment as our primary market, we are finding more and more OEMs who are coming to us and asking us about how we can integrate in order to allow them to penetrate the marketplace. So I thank you for the time that you've given me to explain a little bit about what we do, and I invite people to visit us at www.transfersoft.com. Sorry for the advert, and learn a little bit more. And if they want our product, tell the customers to talk to their OEMs about getting it embedded in their storage subsystems or other hardware.
Wow, amazing stuff. Again, Allan Ignatin, co-founder, president, and CEO of TransferSoft. Have a great evening, sir.
Thank you, Ryan. My pleasure. Thank you. Same as well.